There are moments in history when a city does not simply fall, it transforms. Not in silence, not gently, but in fire, stone, and iron. In the spring of 1453, the walls of Constantinople still stood, scarred, ancient, defiant. For 1,000 years they had guarded the last echo of Rome. For 1,000 years they had watched empires rise and disappear. But this time was different. Beyond the horizon, an army unlike any before it gathered in the dust of Thrace. They were young, they were relentless, and they followed a ruler who did not come to raid. He came to claim history. Mehmed, son of Murad, only 21 years old, but carrying a vision larger than the walls before him. He did not see Constantinople as a prize, he saw it as destiny. The city knew he was coming. Inside the walls, church bells echoed through narrow streets. Merchants whispered prayers over closed stalls. Children were kept indoors. The Theodosian Walls, triple-layered, legendary, had stopped Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, Rus. They were thought to be unbreakable. But the world had changed. Gunpowder had arrived, and with it, the end of medieval certainty. At dawn, the cannons roared. Stone trembled. Dust rose from centuries-old mortar. The ground itself seemed to recoil. These were not the small siege engines of past wars. These were monstrous bombards, forged to do one thing: break eternity. Each impact shook the city's confidence. Each explosion erased another piece of inherited security. Still, the defenders fought back. Byzantine soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder with Genoese mercenaries. Arrows rained from towers. Greek fire burned across the moat. For weeks, the walls held. For weeks, history hesitated. But empires are not defeated in a single blow. They erode. Stone by stone, hour by hour. The bombardment never stopped. Day blurred into night, night dissolved into smoke. Wooden barricades replaced shattered gates. Prayers grew louder. Outside, Ottoman ranks waited patiently, disciplined, silent, certain. They knew something the city did not. Time no longer favored the old world. Then came the final assault. Before sunrise, under a sky the color of ash, waves of soldiers moved forward. First came irregulars, testing, exhausting, distracting. Then came trained infantry. Then the elite, the janissaries, disciplined, armored, unwavering. The breach in the wall, once a crack, had become a wound, and through that wound, the future entered. Fighting was brutal. In the rubble of collapsed towers, steel met steel, shields splintered, men slipped on broken stone. The defenders fought with desperation born of memory. The attackers fought with certainty born of ambition. And then, the moment. A banner rose above the breach, not yet the symbol known to modernize, but the beginning of it, a crescent, a sign that something irreversible had happened. The walls of Constantinople had been crossed. Inside the city, chaos erupted. Narrow streets filled with smoke and shouting. Church bells rang without rhythm. Some fled toward Hagia Sophia. Some barricaded homes. Some stood and resisted. But the tide had shifted, and tides do not retreat for stone. Through shattered gates and splintered doors, Ottoman soldiers advanced, methodical, organized. This was not mindless destruction. It was conquest, measured, strategic. Istanbul was not yet its name, but it was already becoming its future. The last Byzantine emperor, Constantine XI, did not flee. He removed his imperial regalia and entered the fight as a soldier. No crown, no ceremony, only steel. Somewhere in the confusion of battle, he disappeared into legend. With him vanished the final thread connecting the city to Rome, and with that, an era ended. When the sun rose fully, it did not illuminate a destroyed world. it revealed a transferred one. The banners now visible across towers and streets were symbols of victory, but more than that, they were declarations of permanence. The young sultan entered the city not as a raider, but as a ruler. He rode through streets still echoing with battle, not to burn them, but to claim them. Hagia Sophia stood silent. Its massive dome, witness to a millennium of prayer, waited. Mehmed dismounted. He entered, and in that moment, Constantinople did not vanish, it transformed. The church would become a mosque, the capital would change hands, but the city itself would survive, reimagined, reclaimed, reborn. In the years that followed, walls were repaired, markets reopened, new neighborhoods rose. Scholars arrived from across the Islamic world. Architects reshaped the skyline. Minarets joined domes. The city did not become a ruin. It became a center of trade, of law, of art, of empire. The crescent that once appeared as a war symbol grew into something larger, a mark of authority, a sign of continuity, a reminder that history does not freeze in defeat, it evolves. For Europe, 1453 was the end of the Middle Ages. For the Ottomans, it was the beginning of something vast. From these streets would emerge a power stretching across 3 continents. From these walls would rule sultans whose influence would reshape borders and belief. What fell that day was not civilization, it was control. What rose was an empire. Centuries later, the symbol seen in that moment of victory would take its modern form, standardized, refined. But its meaning was born here, in smoke, in shattered stone, in the echo of cannons against ancient walls. That crescent was not just cloth, it was a declaration. The world had shifted. When people say Constantinople fell, they imagine disappearance. But cities do not disappear. They change hands, they change names, they change rulers, but they endure. Today, the skyline still carries layers of memory. Beneath every street lies Rome, Byzantium, Ottoman stone, and above it, a modern nation. The city did not die in 1453. It entered a new chapter. Empires rarely announce their arrival quietly. They arrive in dust, in thunder, in banners rising over broken gates. But what defines them is not how they conquer, it is what they build after. And from the ruins of Constantinople, an empire was born that would stand for centuries. They thought they were witnessing the fall of a city. They were witnessing the birth of a world. And the echo of that day still moves through history, because some moments do not belong only to the past, they belong to everything that follows. 1453 was not just the end of Byzantium, it was the beginning of Istanbul, and the rise of an empire that changed the course of civilization. If you listen carefully, you can still hear it. Not the cannons, not the shouting, but the turning of an age, and the sound of a new banner catching the wind.
أكبر أشهد أن لا